be here. I kept an early flight on Southwest, which is not fun, but I'm here, so thanks for having me. Let's see, so I get to follow David and Nikki, and they set me up, which is really good because I get to talk about the Department of Health side. And we are the ones that are essentially responsible for why this conference has to get put on in the first place, because it's a permit requirement in the MS4 permit, public education outreach is a very important part of that MS4 permit. So that is why you guys get to enjoy this conference today. So I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you for having me. And I get to talk about enforcement actions, which just so happens to be like my favorite subject as the enforcement section supervisor. So I can go through and explain that to you guys. And we're going to focus more on the code citations. So a little bit of background, and David had kind of talked about it already, but I'll go into it a little bit more. So Hawaii has the revised statutes, HRS 342B. And that was enacted in 1989, and it mirrors the Federal Clean Water Act in a lot of ways. Been around for a really long time, and basically it just says that we're not allowed to pollute our state waters. But realistically, we know that that's not possible. So they developed what's called the NPDES program, which essentially a permit that allows you to pollute under certain circumstances and with restrictions. And so, because Hawaii has this statute, this law, the EPA has authorized the Clean Water Branch to be able to enforce and administer that program. So, if you're not familiar with the Department of Health, that's what we do. If you haven't yet had the opportunity to work with us, we will at some point. So the Clean Water Branch is, let's see, there used to be 4 sections. It's now 3 because our polluted runoff control broken off and become a new branch. So now they're now the Surface Water Protection Branch. And so the Clean Water Branch currently only consists of 3 sections. So you might be familiar with our engineering section. They're the ones that are responsible for writing and issuing your NPDES permits. And they also deal with the water quality certifications, which is what's issued for work that's been done in waters. Another section that we have within our branch is the monitoring section, and those are the guys who get to really have fun because they go to the beach every day and they get to sample water, and it's an easy job. But they also do the water quality standards, and the hard part of their job is to do the TMDLs and the integrated report. So you get a little bit of a break by going to the beach, which I'm super jealous about. And then the last part is the enforcement section, so that's where I'm at. We're a small little group, there's only 6 of us for the entire state, so we don't answer your calls or your emails right away. That's the reason why. And we essentially are responsible, like in a nutshell, we do a lot of inspections. And our whole focus is to evaluate whether facilities are in compliance with their permits. But even more so because what use water pollution law isn't just for the permitted facilities, it's just the public as a whole where you're not allowed to pollute our water. So we do investigations of things that aren't permitted, that would just never be allowed to be discharged. And a big part of that is that when we do find violations or non-compliances, we issue enforcement actions. So enforcement actions, the reason why they're so necessary is because they observe violations, they hold violators accountable, but more importantly, it also just levels the playing field. And what I mean by that is that your competitors don't have like an unfair advantage over you. so that everybody is kind of being kept at the same standard. And enforcement actions just help to keep that standard. This is just like a cute little diagram of saying what I already just said. But what we do is, as you can see at the very top, like everything is oversight. So the MPDS program, it is a self-reported, integrity-based program. There's no way we could possibly inspect every facility and ensure that every facility or permanent person is doing everything all the time. So we rely on the permittees to be honorable and to self-report, and that's a big part of the MPDS program. So what we do in the enforcement section is we just make sure that that self-reporting is happening. And we have a way of flagging it in our system when certain required items don't come through. It flags us, and that's how we know we need to visit you. And then because we don't only just administer the MPS program and we do the whole water pollution law as a whole, we get a lot of complaints. And this could be from just homeowners or small businesses that would never be required to get a permit, but if they are polluting into a state water and causing a pollution, then that's something that we would go and investigate as well. And through those investigations or inspections, if we determine that you're in compliance, you just go right back up into the oversight box where you continue to self-report. However, if we find that there are non-compliances, that's where we enter into issuing enforcement actions. And then the enforcement action, the goal is always to return you back to compliance, because if we can assure compliance is being obtained, then that's assurance that we know that the water is being protected. We have several different tools in our toolbox as far as enforcement actions, and they range from informal to formal. Informal would be something like a warning letter. I do have to let you know that we don't do them that often. We reserve warning letters more for the public that are not so aware of our requirements, and we use that as like an educational letter to inform them of our laws. And that really goes a long way, because for small businesses or for homeowners who just aren't part of this program or this community, they may not know. And so that's when we would just issue a warning letter to them to like advise them, put them on notice. We would rarely, if ever, send a warning letter to a permitted facility, because the understanding is that you should already know what the requirements are, which is why you're a permitted facility in the first place. A notice of apparent violation. That is one step up from a warning letter, and if we issue that, it's an opportunity for you to voluntarily come into compliance and tell us what you're going to do to get into compliance without us having to order you. And then the next level up is field citations, and that one is the one that I'm going to go into a lot more detail throughout this presentation. And I don't want to confuse you because they're never done in the field, even though they're called field citations. We're not police officers. We don't have guns and badges and our little citations. We have notepads and pens, and we're the government, so we have to go back to the office and write it up. So it sounds like it's a field citation that's done in the field, but it really isn't. But they are for smaller penalties, and they're for corrections that can be easily done. Like less severe type of violation, I would say. And then moving on up the chain, we go to notice of violations of orders and even administrative orders and consent. Those that, we reserve those for our more severe penalties, severe violations, higher penalties. At that point in time, we will take into account our statutory max, which has been increased to now $60,000 per day per violation. And those are issued when there is pretty substantial corrective actions that need to be made. So the big chunk of them all kind of fall within that field citation range. And then of course there's criminal enforcement. We don't actually do that, but we do referrals to our state and federal criminal court. Okay, so going in more about field citations, like I said, this is our most commonly used enforcement action, and we really like it because it's very fast. It kind of gets it out the door and gets the corrections done relatively quickly, which is again what we're trying to strive for, right? We want to make sure that the waters are protected, so fast responses are the key. So what a field citation is it's an expedited settlement offer. And it's written into rules. What we did was we looked at all of the common violations that we see on a regular basis, and we categorized them. And we assessed a penalty, a flat penalty for it. And that is written into our rules, so it's set. And because it's written into a rule, it's fast for us to get them out the door and get it issued to you quickly. And it's an offer for an expedited settlement without having to go through the more formal and noble route. It would take longer, and again, include higher penalties and then more extensive corrective action. We will use a field citation if it's something that we feel can be resolved quickly. And there are 8 categories right now that we identified as the common ones that we see on a regular basis. So I'll go through those 8 categories a little bit more in detail. Just know that if you get a field citation, that is an offer to settle. You do not have to accept the field citation. But just know that if you don't accept the field citation, you do run the risk of us taking more enforcement action, which would be like the NOVA or AOC route. And at that point in time, the penalty, the smaller penalty, won't be applicable. It won't be offered anymore, and we'll go with the higher penalties, taking into account the $60,000. So it's kind of a sweet deal. What I'm saying. Okay, so the first category has to do with if you allowed a discharge of a pollutant into a state water or into a storm drain, because most storm drains in Hawaii do end up going through a state water. So the idea is if it gets into the storm drain, it will likely get into state water. So just know that. State waters, they consist of oceans, rivers, lakes, streams, drainage ditches, canals. Even if they're man-made, we consider state water. And if you are in this category where you've been caught discharging into a state water and you did not have a permit to do so, or if you do have a permit and let's say you've exceeded your permitted limit, or if you did have a permit and you discharged something that was not authorized by your permit, or through an outfall that wasn't authorized by your permit, you would fall into this category. And if it's your first time violation, you would just assess a $1,000 penalty. Any subsequent violations would be $4,000. Some common things that we find, like pollutants that we normally would find in this category, and these are things that we would never ever permit. There is no permit that would be issued for this. Are things like common for it. Construction is dirt and sediment. In the bottom, you can see a lot of greenways. So when I say greenways, I'm not really talking about, Mother Nature knocking down a tree or a branch and it ends up in the stream and it just happens to be there. This is more like deliberative, where people are cutting or trimming trees and then disposing them into the stream. And that's where we can take an action against that. If it's just natural and it fell in the stream, I obviously can't find Mother Nature, so it just is what it is. It's not to say it isn't a problem, it's just not my problem. Other things are like concrete slurry, pasture, oils. We've got paint. Paint is another one. Any of that gets into a storm drain or a state water. That's the easy notification. We've got soap, surfactants. We do that from time to time. The middle picture is wastewater, raw sewage. It was dyed to find out where it was connected to, and it was connected to a home sewage. So that is untreated wastewater. It will never be allowed to be discharged. With all of those things would equal flood notification. Okay, so the second category is when you're doing an activity that would have triggered a permit. So since we are at the stormwater conference and we brought up the construction stormwater permits that trigger that 1 acre or more. If you had did a construction activity and you did not have your NPDES permit and then you went over your 1 acre and then now you want to get an NPDES permit because the county is trying to tell you that you need to go get one, so they're sending you to DOH because you're trying to get an after the fact permit and they won't let you until you resolve it with the Department of Health. Well, we don't issue after the fact permits. NPDES permits are permits to prevent pollution. You cannot prevent pollution from an activity that already has occurred. There's no way we could, at that point, issue a permit without first issuing a field citation or enforcement action. We have to resolve the violation for you not having that permit in the first place. And then that's one thing I like about the Maui County specifically is they're really good about making sure that if you didn't get that permit, that they come in and they check in with us. And they will hold up your after the fact permit until you resolve it with us. So that's one good thing. And then you're going to end up having to submit an NOI for permit coverage if you're going to continue with your construction. And they will hold up issuing you your NGPC until your enforcement action with us is resolved. So it's a good idea, like how Mickey was saying, to kind of estimate what you think your project size is going to be, and include all of your calculations in there, because if you underestimate and you're below that 1 acre and you didn't get that permit and you eventually go over 1 acre, you're going to be in violation. And your project is going to be on hold. We're going to have to tell you to stop working until you get that new permit, right? Until you get a permit that allows you to work. And then that permit won't be able to get issued until you resolve the enforcement action. So it's really going to mess you up. It's best to just overestimate. And if you're at that 0.9, which I always call BS, just take the error side of caution and just go and get the NOI. And get the NGPC. It's going to save you like a world of hurt. I tell you, we get these all the time, and we have no problem issuing those citations for these. These are easy ones. We like these. So if that happens for your first time, it's $1,000. Any subsequent ones will be enforced. Okay, so this is kind of a big category. This has to do with BMPs, and BMPs are like, essential when it comes to something like construction for water, because the whole goal is to prevent pollution, right? And their Appendix C, which is in your NGPC, has, I don't even know how many pages, the whole section 5 is dedicated to BMP. It's spelled out for you. So we take this like really serious. The construction stormwater, you're not having to do sampling and like, analysis. So the whole emphasis is on BMPs. So when we go on and do an inspection and we are looking at your BMPs that are supposed to be installed at your site, you're looking to see if they're installed correctly, if they're being implemented, are you maintaining it? It's not enough to just put them up and then walk away. You have to repair them if they need repairs. And if they're effective, and if they even make sense, like, is what you're putting make sense for what your construction site activity is? You know, we look at all of that. And interesting thing about this category is you could do, 8 out of 10 BMP correct, but if you do 2 wrong, that box gets checked. It's like an all-inclusive. You're either in or you're out. So once the box is checked, it's checked. So you could do all of your BMPs except for one thing correctly, but if that one thing was bad enough, then that'll just get you that $1,000 fine right after that. But on the flip side is, if you did all your BMPs bad, then you only get 1 fine. No, the way you look at it. But some common ones is like your silk fences. Those are pains. You always find problems with that. And Nikki already pointed out all the problems that you could potentially have with silk fence. Those are very common ones. The filter socks, yeah. If they're being mobilized from wind or rain, that could be an issue. Let's see. There's some other ones where, they just put in a BMP and then walk away and think that that's good. And so you see that it's foreign and it's not preventing any pollution. So, I think we have more here. Some other common BMPs is foreign filter socks, no perimeter controls, your slopes are not like stabilized, right? You have a lot of exposed soil. There's a requirement for your portable toilets. Kind of a silly one, but it is there. I should also mention that every requirement in your permit is enforceable. Every line of it. So even if it seems like a silly requirement, it's a requirement, it's enforceable, it's expected that you're going to do it. So you expect that you're going to do it. Okay, category 4. Again, everything is about, what it all comes down to is preventing pollution. Right? So having your BMPs, having your permits, and then doing inspections on those BMPs, doing inspections to see if you've had discharges, or if you have a risk of discharge, or if your BMPs need repairs. Those are all very necessary requirements of your permit, which is why it's written in there. Because the whole point is to prevent pollution. So if you are found to not be conducting your inspections, or you're not conducting them at the frequency that your permit requires, then those are very easy citation for us to take. Pretty straightforward, because how could you prevent something if you're not even looking? And there's a whole section 9 of your Appendix C, that goes into great detail of what an inspection entails. So it's prescribed for you. You don't feel bad taking it or an action when you're not doing it, because you feel like it's all laid out. That's $1,000 for the first time violation and 4,000 for any subsequent violation. I should also mention, like, you could have all these boxes checked. You can, like, on your field citation, it's not like you only get one field citation and only one box. No, if it's applicable to your site, you could have every box checked, and they all add up at the end. All right, so this one has to do with your paperwork. And paperwork, although it's not necessarily preventing pollution like the other categories did, it's still very important because by documenting, you're showing us that you understand what the requirements are, that your knowledge of the NPS program is there. And again, these are all requirements that are explicitly written into the permit and stated straightforward. So when you're not achieving them, they're just easy checkboxes. This one has to do with not keeping your permit documents on hand. Your notice of intent, your SWIP, and one of the big things is, your SWIP and your BNP plan. Your SWIP and your BNP plan, it's kind of like the Bible. It's saying everything that you need to say that you're going to do at this project. And that anybody who's coming to your project can like pick it up and know exactly what to do to prevent pollution, right? So when you don't have that, or you haven't developed it, or it's not at your office or nearby, that just tells us as an inspector that you're not knowledgeable in the requirement, or you're not taking it seriously. And it doesn't do you any good if it's just like written and then left at office and never looked at. It's meant to be looked at and then implemented. But because it is a paperwork violation, you'll see that we gave you a discount. The price is a little cheaper, $200 instead of $1,000. But it still is a requirement, so expected that it will be done. I should say that, like, when we do an inspection, because it's supposed to be kept at site or nearby, if you cannot produce it to us that day or the very next day at the latest, even if you do have it, it doesn't mean anything if you can't produce it. You know, if it takes you more than a day or two to get it to us, it's too late because the requirement is to have it on hand. Category 6 is when you fail to submit documents. So there are certain things in the permit that you're required to submit to us. One of the biggest things when it comes to construction stormwater specifically is when you don't notify us when you started construction or when you ceased construction. And it seems like it's a minor thing, but it really isn't. By notifying us when you started construction, that is letting us know that your pollution risk has started, right? And we need to be kept aware of that. We need to know who all of our potential dischargers are. And same thing when you cease your construction, we know that you're no longer a pollution risk. And then because we are only 6 for the entire state, we do rely on some contractors to do inspections for us. And if we have them coming out and spending lots of money for them to help us do inspections, and they get to a construction site that's supposed to have submitted their NOC but didn't, that's a big waste of their time and resources and money. So that one is more irritating when we have to do that and we get to the site and you're like, God, they're closed already? They're going to tell us? We're going to send a field citation if you just waste our time. And that's $1,000. And that's I'm pretty sure that sucks when the project is closed and then they think they're all done and then, I don't know, a couple months later they get $1,000 fine for not submitting a simple form. sure it's irritating, but it is what it is. So make sure that your required notifications are being submitted to us. It is a permit requirement, and we will take action if we don't get them. Okay, so the stormwater pollution control plan, or your DMP plan, it's meant to be a living document. So the expectation is that it's going to be updated. It's not enough to just develop one because that's what I was supposed to do when I got my application, and then that's it. It's not an exercise on if you can follow instructions. You have to update it to be reflective of what the current situation at the site are. And we know with construction in particular, it's very dynamic, always changing. So we expect your SWIFT to always be changing. We don't expect the BMP that you implemented on day one is going to be the same BMP that you implemented, halfway into the project when it's changed and your pollutant sources may have changed. It needs to be reflective. So when it's not updated and we look at your SWIFT and you're not following it, that would be something that we would take an action on, because it's showing that you're not taking the requirement serious. And that will cost you $1,000 for your first violation. And then the last category, category 8, this one is we see it a lot. And it's when the certifying person or the duly authorized representative who is essentially the person that owns the permit when they don't sign permit-related documents. So because they are the permit owner, they need to be aware of what is all happening at the project. And they have to sign off on certain documents. And when they're not signed by the certifying person or the rep, we can't accept them because, we can't accept them because there could always be the argument that the certifying person didn't know. So we expect that they sign all permit-related documents. So for something like an inspection report, we understand that the certifying person, probably the director, is not the one that's on the ground doing the inspection, and that's fine. So the inspector can go and sign those site inspections. But the expectation is that either the certifying person or the duly authorized representative would also sign off on that inspection, so that that's an indication to us that they're aware of what's happening in the project, because ultimately they're the ones that are responsible. Anything that comes out of our office in the form of like an action or any correspondence is going to go to that person. So we need to make sure that that person is up to date in the system and that they're the correct person and that they are signing off on everything. So when we come across permit documents that don't have that signature, that right person's signature or their certification, that's something that we have to take an enforcement action for. We always recommend having the certifying person authorize a representative, somebody who's kind of lower, that is more easily accessible, that can sign on the certifying person's behalf. So that certifying person, who usually is a higher up and hard to reach person, that they don't miss out on meeting this requirement because of that. So just keep that in mind. Only a certifying person can designate an authorized rep, and you can only have one authorized rep at any given time. At the website at the bottom there, this will take you to our webpage, and it'll give you a lot more detailed information as to what exactly a certified person or a duly authorized representative can sign. A duly authorized rep cannot sign everything that a certified person can, but they can sign majority of what needs to be signed. I just highlighted a couple of things that only the certifying person consign and not to do the authorized rep. And it's pretty obvious ones like the application. Only the certifying person who's going to hold the permit can submit an application. And then obviously only the certifying person can authorize a representative. A representative cannot authorize themselves. Pretty obvious. And anything that has to do with like transferring the ownership or changing the name, that ought to be done by the certifying person. But other than that, anything else permit document wise can all be signed by the authorized rep. Again, I highly recommend encouraging the authorized reps to be set up in place for the certifying person. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, if you do receive a field citation, it is an offer to settle. It is not it's not like a no where if you don't accept it, it goes into default, or you have to contest it and go through a hearing. It's not at that point yet. A field citation is, it's in lieu of having to go through the novel route. They're smaller penalties, so as you can see, they're all like 1,000, 2,000, 200. So at most, maybe if you had all the boxes checked, you could probably walk away with maybe like, I don't know, what was it, $7,000 at most. That's kind of a sweet deal compared to $60,000 per day for a violation that we can assess. So it's an offer. If you choose to accept it, what you need to do is obviously correct the violation, because we want to, again, the goal is to get back into compliance. Because by assuring that you're in compliance means that water is being protected, and you have to document how you've corrected it. So if it's in the form of a BMP, you would expect that you would submit photographs that show that that BMP has been corrected. If it's a paperwork violation, we would expect that you would either correct that and show us how it was corrected, or at the very least provide a response or a statement of what you're going to be doing moving forward to correct it. Just as much as you can accept the settlement offer, we can choose to accept your corrective action report. If it's not acceptable, we can turn it away and say, you know what, I take back my offer. I don't want to offer it to you anymore. I'm just going to go right and over it. So if you're accepting the solicitation, you have to prove to us that you're going to do what it takes to correct it and get back to compliance. Again, the certifying person or the rep are the only ones that can sign the solicitation. These are like legal documents, just like all important and legal documents. They have to be signed by the right person. You have to submit full payment. You don't do payment plans. Sorry. And our administrative service office only likes money orders or cashier checks or journal vouchers if you're another government agency. They don't like personal checks. We don't have a credit card. We cannot accept cash, unfortunately. And most importantly, you're saying that by accepting this solicitation that you're going to stay in compliance moving forward, that you're not going to be a problem for us. If you choose not to accept the settlement offer, then just know that the DOH has the right to escalate the action, and then that's when we would go with the NOVA or AOC route, and that requires us to take into account the statutory max, and those would be heftier fines. So, like the BNP example, where once you get the box checked, it's $1,000. So in the NOVA route, we would take account for every single BNP. So that would add up for every BNP that was non-compliant. And the corrective actions would be a lot more extensive when we do an overcome. So just know that you do not accept the settlement offer. Okay. So I've included some helpful links. These just take you to like our website, the appendices that we have, because we offer many different general permits. We cover things from dewatering, hydrant testing, industrial stormwater, construction stormwater. You'll find it all there. Even decorative ponds. We've got FAQs on permitting because that always comes up. So we put together, common questions that we've got, and we provided some answers for you. The e-permitting portal, I don't like that portal, but it's there. If you have any questions, please don't comment about that. On the engineering section. And then also, I've included a guidance on how to apply for an NPDES permit. These are just all helpful links for you. And that's it. That's all I got.